This is the Saucony Endorphin Elite. It was a talking point on the shoe scene at the beginning of the year when it was released onto the market. And there were really three key factors why there was so much noise around the shoe. Firstly, it looks like a spaceship, even by super shoe standards. Secondly, Saucony already have a flagship racing shoe in the Endorphin Pro 3. So how did the Endorphin Elite fit in? And thirdly, its high price point of $275 made it the joint most expensive shoe in the market alongside the Nike Alphafly. But does its performance warrant its addition into the range and market? I believe from a performance standpoint that the Endorphin Elite is 100% worthy of an addition into the Saucony range and into the market. It now uses a reworked PEBA foam called PowerRun HG, standing for Holy Grail. It's the brand's most responsive foam yet, delivering over 95% energy return or savings. It also is one of the most stable, if not the most stable, plated shoe in the market at the moment. And then it's got an exaggerated toe spring to help pivot your foot forward, which favors some runners and is a point of difference compared with the Endorphin Elite. But the one maybe consideration to make is that being so performance sort of specific, there's trimmed features such as a exposed outsole that might make it more susceptible to certain durability issues, as well as less of a versatile racer trainer rather than an out-and-out race day shoe. The Endorphin Elite offers some points of difference compared with Endorphin Pro. Firstly, with this new foam, PowerRun HG, we've got a slightly firmer feel underfoot compared with PowerRun PB, which is more beaded or pelleted, as you can see on the midsole. We then have pretty much the same stack height, but stack height is measured from beneath your foot within the shoe rather than the sidewalls of the shoe. So while the shoes have the same stack height, there's a lot more foam on the Endorphin Elite, so there's more volume underfoot. And this helps give the shoe a broader base and higher sidewalls that also offer that stability component as your foot sits more inside the shoe than on the shoe. We then have a broader toe box. There were some feedback given by many users on the Endorphin Pro that the toe box was on the narrow side. The Endorphin Elite, however, offers a slightly broader toe box, and I've got quite a narrow foot, and I can almost pinch some unused space in the shoe. Not that I feel it being overly spacious, but I can feel that if I had a broader foot, it would work just fine. We then also have a less versatile shoe in hand at the moment. It's not something that you can sort of sneakily run off-road in if you really needed to do a quick zip through the park where there's off-road segments, which I would do in the Endorphin Pro. The Endorphin Elite is not something that you would sort of open up to everyday training, long runs, etc. You'd really reserve it for fast runs only. In fact, you'd have to pick and choose which workouts to use the shoe or not, as pretty much you only really can feel the benefit if you run faster in the shoe, opposed to the Endorphin Pro that's pretty versatile on foot. So far, I've absolutely loved the Saucony Endorphin Elite. It could very well be one of my favorite races of all time. It's certainly up there. I really feel a performance advantage when I'm doing longer workouts for paces around half marathon pace. What's quite interesting is if I'm doing track work or sort of 5K-ish speed, I almost would rather prefer the Endorphin Pro, as I feel I can run fast in the shoe if it's quicker, shorter distances. But anything longer where you're really trying to be as efficient as possible at paces that aren't sort of requiring a sprinting biomechanics from you, but more a fast, sustained effort, I can really feel an advantage from the shoe. But it's just quite an interesting observation in that the two shoes can kind of be viewed segmented for different events. This from 5K all the way up to marathon or ultra, but this shoe really kicks in only at, I'd say, around 15K distance plus for me personally. And there'll be an overlap in distances where you kind of would pick and choose based on your preference, just on the underfoot feel. So let's hone in on some of the individual aspects of the shoe, starting with the upper. which, to be fair, looks like one of the most complicated uppers on earth. And it is, but it in fact really works. I'm a fan of simplicity, but this just ties together and does a really good job. I mean, as you can see, there are literally cutouts on the shoe, gaps in the upper. This mesh is very parachute-like and breathable. It's an exposed mesh. So you've got a lot of airflow coming in the shoe to keep your foot nice and cool. In fact, this tongue is perforated, so there's so much airflow coming to your shoe, which I think is especially beneficial if you're running in hotish conditions, especially humid conditions, in fact. We then have a lacing system that has this band, as you can see here, that's really the security and structure to the shoe. And this band, as you lace your shoe, it closes in on the upper. And in fact, you can see it wrap around the bottom of the shoe, right below the carbon plate. We then have a heel counter that's quite high up, and it was the one thing that I wasn't sure how it would feel on foot. Now, I don't notice it at all. In fact, I really like it. And I found that when I wear the shoe, I don't really have to be finicky about lacing my shoe or relacing my shoe and trying to get the right tension. I sort of lace it up one time and whatever it is, it just really works well. So I don't have to be finicky. And I think part of that is you do have this higher heel counter. But there's padding here so that it doesn't disturb the Achilles. I have heard some runners say that they prefer wearing a thicker sock when running in the shoe, just for comfort reasons. I really don't notice this at all, and the shoe works for me with both thin and thick socks, short or high socks. So probably one of my favorite uppers on a racing shoe of all time. We then have the midsole of the shoe, which is supposedly the most important part of the shoe. It's what gives you the energy return and comfort and impact control underfoot. As I've mentioned, it uses Powerrun HG, Saucony's Holy Grail foam, which will trickle into the rest of the Endorphin lineup as it updates, or as the individual shoes update. Within the shoe is, of course, a full-length carbon fiber plate, as you can see here. What's interesting is that the plate is full-length, but it's forked on the toes. So there's 4 individual forks here. And by doing this is you can customize each element of the fork with different densities so that it's more rigid or more flexible along different toe lines, which I think is quite clever. And then we've got quite a voluminous midsole, as we've spoken about, that gives the shoe a more chunky feel in a good way to some of the other carbon plated shoes in the market. We then have the shoes Outsole, and the brand have been quite discerning about how much and where they've placed rubber on the shoe. So they've left some exposed areas, and the rubber they've used is quite thin. It's an extremely performance related design, as rubber can be quite a heavy material, but by isolating it on key areas only and providing you basically your bare necessity that you require for rubber, you can get a weight down to what we have as 7.2 ounces in men's sizing, which is 204 grams, or in women's 6.5 ounces on the shoe, which is 185 grams, which is staggering on how you can get a shoe so well cushioned yet so light. So pros and cons. Pros, very performance related, keeps the weight down. It's isolated on key wear areas, so if you are a light wearer, you probably won't have much issue here, but it does mean that the shoe lacks grip on wet conditions, and if you are perhaps slightly misusing the shoe on slow runs where you heel strike a bit more, or if you are a faster outsole wearer, this might be a bit exposed for you and might require you to be sort of extra discerning on how you choose to use the shoe as well, isolating it only for race days or particular sessions or workout speed days. All in all, I think the Saucony Endorphin Elite is a ridiculously good shoe that offers a lot of performance advantage. However, I think that there are responders and non-responders, especially based on the feedback I've heard on people using this shoe. Some have said that this is an amazing shoe, others have said that they're better off in something like the Endorphin Pro, Adios Pro or Vaporfly, etc. So I think the best way of determining which one you are is by going into store, trying both of these shoes on, and figuring out if you appreciate this extra toe spring and rocket effect that the Endorphin Elite gives you. If you don't, it's likely that you should stick with this. If you do, you've got a pretty useful shoe, especially over longer distances, and a pace range that probably lies between your 15K race pace to marathon onwards. So it's got a large potential here, but it also has non-responders that are better off in something traditional. That's my review of the Endorphin Elite.